one of the common misconceptions we have here is that, you know, interracial marriage and not letting same-sex couples marry were kind of the same issue. Totally different. When we had laws that banned couples from different races from marrying, that was about keeping two races apart. That was wrong. That was the institution of marriage, which was still men and women, being hijacked for another cause. Here we have the same situation. The institution of marriage is being hijacked for another cause. Marriage is about bringing the two halves of humanity together, period. And no one should hijack it for any other purpose, whether they think it's about fairness, equality, or whether they think it's about gaining rights. There are ways to gain rights that do not destroy what is marriage, bringing together the two halves of society for the betterment of society and raising of children.
Shauna.
I think all of us here in this room can agree that we want Maine children to grow up in safe and healthy environments, to be protected, to be treated fairly. And that's why all of the major children's advocacy groups in the state testified in favor of marriage equality at the public hearing in April. The Maine chapter of the National Association of Social Workers, the Maine chapter of the American Academy of Pediatricians, the Maine Children's Alliance, one after another, experts testified that what's important are two parents who love their children, who do what is necessary to raise those children in a safe and healthy environment. So the facts and the science are that children growing up in the homes of same-sex couples, as so many are across the state, are thriving. And we need to institute marriage so that those children aren't discriminated against, so those children aren't treated as lesser. We need to ensure equality for all Maine families.
Let me ask you a question, the no folks. If this law stays in effect, there is a protection for churches who decide not to do marriages based on religious beliefs, but there's really nothing in the law protecting lay people. What if a notary public decides he or she doesn't want to perform a same-sex marriage for moral reasons, or let's say the catering hall doesn't want to host same-sex marriage receptions? Aren't they going to open themselves up to being sued? That protection just doesn't seem to be there in the law. David?
It's right in the law that no one has to perform a same-sex marriage. That covers everybody, not just religious officials. Secondly, the people of Maine voted several years back that we don't want to have discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. It's been in the law, and it hasn't resulted in any floodgate or any major problems at all. There hasn't been any significant number of lawsuits. Mainers are good about equality. It fits well on us, and it's not a problem. So this law is going to work just fine, just like when we passed the law a few years back.
Do you agree that there won't be any legal problems that flow out of this, Bob?
No, I think that's absurd to say that no legal problems will come out of this. As a matter of fact, legal scholars who are on both sides of the same-sex marriage issue all over the country are saying that it absolutely will. President Obama just appointed as commissioner of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, Kai Feldblum, who is nationally known, Georgetown, I believe she's from Georgetown University, legal constitutional scholar. She says that it is inevitable that lawsuits will come about when same-sex marriage is legalized, that there will be conflicts, not might be, she says there will be conflicts with religious liberties. That's the same, you hear that same thing from professors, law professors at the University of Texas, University of Michigan, Notre Dame, it's just so common. Of course they will. The issue that you just asked about regarding someone hosting a reception for a wedding, for example, well, some of those are already covered under the current laws. But what about the church that I attend? If the church that I attend, the small, tiny little protection that's given in this law is only about the minister actually performing the ceremony. It says nothing about if the church commonly allows people in the community to use their fellowship hall for a wedding reception, something that doesn't contradict what they teach in the church, they do that. This doesn't give that kind of protection to a church. It absolutely is not there.
Walter?
Yeah, Bob, this issue's come up many times, and people certainly in your camp have said back when the domestic partnership law was passed that it was going to open up a floodgate of litigation. When there were Maine Human Rights Act changes about protections for people for gays. In that law, there was also a discussion about floodgates of litigation, and I think that everybody here can agree that really hasn't happened yet. And so why is it now on the same-sex marriage part that that's going to happen now? Why those kind of sky is falling predictions, the sky hasn't fallen?
And you got 30 seconds to answer.
Okay, because it's already happened in other states. There are photographers, there are church facilities that have already been the subject of lawsuits of lost tax-exempt status who have paid huge fines, not to mention big legal fees from lawyers and so forth. Present company accepted, I'm sure. But it's already happened in other states, and this goes to the very heart of what is not only taught in churches, not only the performing of a wedding, but this specifically requires a recognition across society of same-sex marriage. A church minister may not be in trouble in church for speaking about that, but if it becomes law, is he going to be able to say the same thing out in the street, for example, or at a school meeting? Who knows where it's going to be? That's what Chai Feldblum said. That's what other law professors are saying all over the place.
And that is going to be the last word, or almost the last word, because now we're going to hear from Gary Crocker of West Gardner, who has his own strange view on this issue, I'm sure. Gary?
The minute I found out what the boys were discussing to kick off their new season of It's the Law, I knew I needed to consult with an expert on the subject of marriage before I started running my mouth. Because this is a topic of some concern to more than a few Maine folks on both sides of the issue. Yeah, but I didn't consult any members of the clergy, marriage counselors, educators, judges, or even lawyers. No siree, Bob. I went straight to the fellow who should know more about the institution of marriage than anyone in the world. My Uncle Russell. After all, he'd been married 17 times at last count, and 5 times to the same woman. So I'm pretty sure he holds a record for multiple marriages, and at the tender age of 76, he may not be done yet. And I'm absolutely certain he holds a record for being married 5 times to the same woman. Anyway, I drove up to Caratunk and walked the 5 miles through the woods to where he lives, all alone, for now. Unless, of course, you count that ornery Maine coon cat that lives in the same cabin with him. Yeah. When I asked Russell why he lives so far from the main road, he had to think for a minute, and he said, well, in order to avoid contact with my ex-wives. Well, especially that ornery one, you know, the one that I married 5 times. If she's so mean, why in the world did you marry her 5 times, I asked Russell. Well, he says, every time we divorced, I got to thinking, no one can be as mean as I thought she was. So I married her again, only to find out that she was meaner than I ever thought she could be. If she's so mean, why in the world did you marry her 5 times, I asked Russell. Well, he says, every time we divorced, I got to thinking, no one can be as mean as I thought she was. So I'd marry her again, yeah, to find out. And sure enough, yeah, she was just as mean as I remembered. Maybe even meaner. Every time I married her. Having learned more than I wanted to about Russell's marriage history, I decided to get his opinion on the same-sex marriage issue and head for the West Gardner area. So I asked him, what do you think about the issue of the same-sex marriage being allowed here in the state of Maine? You know, just like ours. Russell leaned back in his lazy boy recliner, adjusted his Boston Red Sox ball cap so he could look me straight in the eye. And his big brown eyes began to fill up with tears. And as he wiped the tears that run down his cheek, he said in a shaky, emotion-filled voice, haven't those people suffered enough? It's the law. See you next time.
Thanks, Gary. And to those of you who are here on the yes side of this issue, thank you so much for being with us. To those on the no side of the issue, thank you so much for being here. And for all of you out there, don't forget to vote on November 3rd. Now, on behalf of Walter and myself and all of us at Lippman, Cates, and McKee, thanks for watching It's the Law.